Not only did I end up looking like a jackass, I had to fork up a $50 gift card to Lids, and I also had to wear a hat, the Panthers hat, after losing a bet. So I ended up wearing the Panthers hat on the reaction video that I posted on Monday, reacting to the Minnesota Vikings losing to the Carolina Panthers 31-24. This is Realistic Randy of the Mediokr and Best Sports Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. And I'm going to recap the Carolina Panthers game and preview the Cincinnati Bengals game as well. But real quick, I said that the Carolina Panthers had no shot against the Minnesota Vikings. I was clearly wrong about that. To all the Panthers fans out there, make a meme out of me, troll me, whatever it is, as much as I dish it, I have to be able to take it back, and that's fine. But here's the thing. I understand that the Carolina Panthers have one of the top 10 defenses in the NFL, quite possibly over the last couple of years. The reason why I wasn't really worried about that is because the week before that, Case Keenum did very well. He thrived even against a very fast Atlanta Falcons team, which had a very damn good pass rush, by the way, that Atlanta Falcons team did. And then 2 weeks prior to that, he thrived against the LA Rams with that defensive front they have, led by Aaron Donald, who's one of the best players in the NFL. I wasn't really concerned about that. The reason why I was extra confident in that pick last week was because of Mike Zimmer game planning against Cam Newton. And somebody, a YouTuber, commented on the video, on the reaction video, saying, and I brought up how the last couple of weeks, hey, you beat the Atlanta Falcons 14-9. You held them without a touchdown. You beat the Lions on the road on Thanksgiving. You beat the LA Rams, 24-7. You held the LA Rams to only 7 points, to just 7 points. And one of the YouTubers said, well, it's not about the last couple of games you played. It's all about matchups. I'm like, matchups? Matchups? We going to talk about matchups? Allen Iverson style. I didn't even bring this up last week, but since we're talking matchups, last year, the Vikings played Carolina Panthers and Cam Newton. Cam Newton last year against the Minnesota Vikings threw 3 interceptions with a quarterback rating of 47.6. And then in 2014, the Vikings beat the Carolina Panthers 31-13 with a quarterback rating of 65.7. So we're talking about matchups and everything. I didn't even bring that up. So that's why I was extra confident in that pick. I expected the defense to be very disciplined, especially by Mike Zimmer-led team, compared to the other competition that you've gone against and your past success against Cam Newton. I expected it to be the same way this way, as far as this week, having discipline, not over pursuing, have Cam Newton beat you with his arm. And you know what? Because the thing is, to Cam Newton's credit, and look, for everyone out there that's just like, oh, well, if you're waiting for me to all of a sudden be like, well, now I've seen the light. Of course Cam Newton is a top 10 quarterback. What was I thinking? You'll be waiting forever. I still stand by everything that I said. But in Cam Newton's defense and on his credit, or to his credit, he's very good at ad-libbing, basically extending plays. And, he can hit. I compare him to Aaron Rodgers. Hold the phone. I compare him to Aaron Rodgers like this. Aaron Rodgers can extend plays outside the pocket. If he has to run out and make a play, he can do that. So can Cam Newton. The difference between the two is Aaron Rodgers, even outside the pocket, he can throw his receivers open. Cam Newton, when he's outside the pocket, he can extend the play and make a play if a dude is wide open. Other than that, he's just throwing it up for grabs because he is an inaccurate quarterback. Cam Newton he completed 52% of his passes at 5.5 yards per pass attempt, 1 touchdown and 1 interception. So Cam Newton, the defense played, I would say, probably 75 to 80% of their capabilities, but they got caught off guard in a couple of instances. I don't know if they were just playing down to the competition or they didn't expect much. But I brought this up in the reaction video. You had those 2 face masking penalty calls that kept the drive alive for Carolina early in the game, which resulted in a touchdown for them. On that touchdown pass to Devin Funchess, there was no safety help. The entire deep middle of the field, and this was on 3rd and 7, by the way. The entire deep middle of the field was wide open for grabs, and that's why Cam Newton, the pocket was collapsing around him, and he was able to extend the play and throw it open to a wide open Devin Funchess. What's disappointing is the fact that with this Mike Zimmer defense, it's like, really? Like, there's not one man there to at least make a play on the ball or try to make a play. Because if you get beat for the ball, then get beat. But there was no one there. So that was very disappointing. Then not only that, but on that 60-yard run that you gave up 2 60-yard runs, by the way. But on that particular run that Cam Newton took off for 60 yards, and yes, I know Anthony Barr, he got held on that call. It was a bad no call. And quite honestly, we could talk all day about the no calls of holding calls throughout this entire season. I can't tell you how many times that I've seen clear shot holding calls that weren't called. And what annoys me about officials, and I'm not blaming this game on the officials, but in general, what annoys me about officials throughout this entire season, for all the ticky-tack calls that you make, for all the flags that you throw, for all the ticky-tack stuff out there, you miss the blatantly obvious stuff. So I'm well aware that Anthony Barr was held on that play. Andrew Sendejo could have made a play on Cam Newton. The way that the angle that he took, Andrew Sendejo looked like a kicker trying to tackle a return man. Just saying, well, I tried. It was pretty bad, and I'm not trying to bash the defense. You know, it was a hiccup of a game. I expect them to bounce back, and I'm not trying to bash Andrew Sendejo because Andrew Sendejo has had he's low-key one of the defensive MVPs of this year. I know that Everson Griffin, Xavier Rhodes, and Harrison Smith, they're going to get all the praise, but Andrew Sendejo has had a phenomenal year this year, breaking up key passes. He had an interception in that game in Carolina as well. But you know what? Kudos to the Panthers. They did their job. They won the game. You know what? The defense was caught off guard. And you know what? Maybe this is a blessing in disguise. Maybe this is one of those humbling experiences where it's better to lose now instead of running the table throughout the rest of this regular season, and then you get in the playoffs and then suddenly the shock factor is there. You get full of yourself and then you lose. Because you know what? Even though this game is past and they lost, I expected the Vikings to win against the Carolina Panthers. I still feel pretty confident in the Vikings running the table throughout the rest of this regular season. And I'll talk about the Cincinnati preview coming up. But anyway, that's enough with the defensive side of the ball. You know, they had a hiccup of a game, but I expect them to bounce back. So we're going to talk about the offensive side of the ball and then previewing the Cincinnati Bengals game. But coming up real quick,
I'm Jay.
And I'm Matt of the hashtag NFZ, a.k.a. No Fly Zone, now officially part of the BGC Sports Network.
You can also find the show on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/spell it out, hashtag NFZ, and the Apple Podcast app.
Now, let's kick it back over to Realistic Randy and the Mediokr at Best Sports Podcast.
So on the offensive side of the ball, I had no idea that Pat Elflein was dealing with injuries until game day when it was officially announced that he was indeed inactive for the game. And I just said, oh, of course, with the wager that I put up, of course this would happen. But I was like, you know what, they should be okay. And Mike Remmers was out the game as well, but he's been out the last month and a half. So I was like, whatever. And then you lost Riley Reef halfway through the game. And then all of a sudden, the 2016 offensive line of the Minnesota Vikings started flashing before my eyes. Everything started going to hell. But you know what? I got to give props to Case Keenum. Case Keenum, like I said in that reaction video, Case Keenum is the last person that should be blamed for that loss. He was the best offensive player on the field. He may have been the best player for the Vikings in that game overall. Case Keenum did a phenomenal, and you know what? Let's get a couple of things out the way. Yes, he underthrew on the first interception. And yes, I was annoyed. I believe there was a third down play, I believe in the first quarter. It may have been the second or third possession. But there was a play where Stephon Diggs, it was on third down, I believe, and Stephon Diggs, I think he ran like a fade route right up the seam, and he had a step on the dude. The dude was gone. Stephon Diggs had to do beat by at least a step. And all Case Keenum had to do was throw him in stride. He would have caught the ball, maybe would have took off for like an 80-some-odd yard touchdown. But you know what? He underthrew it. Stephon Diggs had to come back. It was batted down. It was an incomplete pass. But besides that, quite honestly, Case Keenum did a great job. He did an outstanding job. I was very impressed with the pocket collapsing around him seemingly every single play. Just the way he was bobbing and weaving and bobbing and weaving. And then there was that one where I think it was Captain Munnerlyn that flew over his back, and he was able to keep the drive alive. Case Keenum did a very good job. And, you know, considering everything else that fell around him, that just went to hell, I mean, the several drop passes, the running game wasn't there. You rushed for 100 yards against the Carolina Panthers on Sunday. But you know what? 40 of those 100 yards that you rushed for came from Case Keenum. Case Keenum is the reason why you still had a chance to win that game with everything going around. And then you drop, like I said, the several drop passes, the two drop passes in the end zone by Adam Thielen, where he had to settle for a field goal instead of going up by 3 points to end the first half. And then not only that, but the drop by Stephon Diggs that resulted in an interception in the red zone. And Case Keenum still came back. He still hung out there. He still played tough. He still played his ass off. Case Keenum is the last person that should be blamed in that game. But you know what? It was odd games for Adam Thielen. It was an odd game for Stephon Diggs. Kyle Rudolph, you know what? I mean, he's been having a good year. I wish he would break a tackle once in a while. That's all. That's my only thing. He dropped the pass. I'm not even going to blame him for that. I just wish he had more fire. And you know what? Maybe I'm going out my skis with this a little bit because I don't follow the Minnesota Twins. I'm a Washington Nationals fan. But from all the talk that I've heard about Joe Mauer's from the fan base is that they wish they had more fire out of him. You wish you just had more energy, just something just to show. And he's kind of like the aw shucks guy. That's how I see Kyle Rudolph. That's how I view him. He's just aw shucks. Whereas Visanthe Shenko, and I rewatched that 2009 NFC Championship game against the New Orleans Saints. Visanthe Shenko, he had that fire. He'll give you a stiff arm and throw you down. Kyle Rudolph doesn't do that. But at this point, he just is who he is. I'm not going to beat a dead horse on this. But Case Keenum did a very, very good job. I think he kicked ass. I was just as impressed with him in that Panthers game as I was impressed with him with that Atlanta Falcons game. I think he's had a phenomenal 2-game stretch. He did a very good job. He's the last person that I'm blaming for that loss. But here's the thing. Moving on to another side of the offense, and I brought this up on the reaction video as well. And I've mentioned this a couple of times throughout the year, but my whole thing is we're winning. I don't want to seem like a grouch, like I'm just nitpicking, looking for something to complain about. But this must be said because in that Panthers game, it was much more magnified because the room of error was slim to none. You had no room for error in that game. With everything that was going on, you had no room for error. Laquan Treadwell, I'm sure, and look, every criticism that I dish out and even with the praises that I dish out, it's all about who that player is on the field or when it comes to basketball on the court. My thing with Laquan Treadwell is I'm sure he's a good guy, and that's all well and good. I watched him at Ole Miss a couple of times. He was a pretty good receiver. He was never a fast guy, but he could out-jump you. That's what he did in the SEC. But the issue that you have now is that he's not good at route running. He mistimes his jumps now, and every time you throw for him, not only are you asking for an interception. I mean, that's the worst case scenario. But in more often cases than not, it's always going to be a contested catch every single time. And yes, Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, they're not always going to be wide open every single time. They're going to make contested catches. I get that. But you at least expect out of your receivers once in a while to get some separations once in a while. Is that too much to ask for a professional NFL wide receiver? I don't think so. And here's why I lump him, and those that have been paying attention to this podcast for a while, these 3 names that I'm going to bring up. And this is why I criticize Rick Spielman on this. Rick Spielman, don't get it twisted. As much as I criticized him in the past, I do believe he should be in the running for Executive of the Year. But at this point, it's not speculation that he's getting more snaps than Jarius Wright or that he's a number 3 receiver. You can see everybody sees the damn games. He's clearly the number 3 receiver on the depth chart for whatever reason. There's no speculation with that. Where there's speculation is who's responsible for it. You got to think that Mike Zimmer and Pat Shurmur, they're like, he shouldn't be on the field. You got to, at least for as much football knowledge as they have in coaching the game, you got to think that they're like, we don't even want to play this guy. And with the past histories and past transgressions of this Vikings team with Matt Khalil, Blair Walsh, and Christian Ponder, this is why I got to think Rick Spielman has something to do with this. Again, this is speculation. Whoever's responsible for this should be called out, all right? But the reason why I'm speculating on Rick Spielman is because of past history that he's had with Christian Ponder, Matt Khalil, and Blair Walsh. And the reason why I keep bringing those 3 names up is because you invested high draft picks on them, and despite how consistently awful, just awful they were on the field, the Vikings and Rick Spielman came up with every excuse of why they were going to keep playing on the field. And then every offseason, in between the different seasons where they have a terrible, horrible year, they say, you know what? And you say, you know what? With Christian Ponder, Matt Khalil, and Blair Walsh, especially with Blair Walsh, I'm like, look, man, just bring in competition. You know, put some fire under their belly. Just give them something to where all of a sudden they realize their job is on the line and they're not complacent with their jobs, knowing that they're going to be the starting of whatever position they're going to be in. And every single offseason, nope, we believe in Christian Ponder. We believe in Matt Khalil. Blair Walsh is our kicker, and we believe he's going to snap out of this funk and blah, 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 blah. They did this all the time. The reason why I add Laquan Treadwell to this circle of horror now is because of a couple of things. You invested a first-round draft pick in him last year, and then not only that, he had a horrendous rookie year last year, and you drafted him, 22nd or 23rd overall, I forgot, whatever. He caught one pass out of 3 targets for 15 yards. Congratulations. And you know what? You move on to this season. It was a rookie year. Let's move on from it. He'll get better this year. Okay, fine. You want to play him? No sweat off my back. But the first half of this season, the first couple of games of this season, you're like, all right, this dude missed time in his jumps, can't run his routes right. Every time you throw to him, it's a contested catch. I don't understand why they don't just say, you know what, Jarius Wright, who I've been harping on in the offseason and even last year and including this year, Jarius Wright is the better receiver. Jarius Wright should be your third receiver. He's a much more efficient wide receiver. There is no football justification as far as to explain for an excuse as far as why Laquan Treadwell is getting more snaps and more targets than Jarius Wright. And I calculated some stats here. Laquan Treadwell has 30 targets this season. He got 30 targets this season so far. Laquan Treadwell caught 17 receptions this year out of 30 targets. That's a 57% That's a 57% catch percentage. Jarius Wright, he has 8 less targets than Jarius Wright, or 8 less targets than Laquan Treadwell this year. He has 22 targets. He has 16 receptions, and that is out of 22 targets. That's a 73% catch percentage. And then not only that, when you look at the rest of the stats, Jarius Wright, with 8 less targets than Laquan Treadwell, has 1 less catch, 5 less yards, and 2 touchdowns. Whereas Laquan Treadwell, with 8 more targets, has 1 more catch, 5 more yards, and 0 touchdowns. There is no justification for why Laquan Treadwell is getting more snaps. Look, your job is to put the best players on the field. I don't understand why every single year we have a Minnesota Vikings pet that is just out there at the expense of the betterment of the team. Like I said, I haven't been talking about it much. I brought it up here and there, but I'm like, you're winning, whatever, I just ignore it. But now in that Carolina Panthers game, it was much more magnified. He ran the wrong route on a third down play that they threw to him. So not only is he out there as a third receiver, you're throwing to him on third downs. Ran the wrong route on 1 third down play, so it was an incompletion. And then on the final possession, on 3rd and 15, you had a chance to get a little bit more cushion and have a much more manageable 4th down on the final possession. Instead, Laquan Treadwell dropped a wide open pass. I don't get the excuses. And people say, well, he's a good blocker. Well, who gives a damn? He's a good blocker. Congratulations. Every time, look, as the third receiver, that's the justification we're going to get. As a third receiver, where oftentimes you need 3 receiver sets. Come on, let's be real. Everybody out here that's watching this, listening to this right now, how many times when you see Laquan Treadwell on the field, you go, oh, well, it's 10 on 11. It's 10 on 11. There's no point in any of this right now. Just don't throw to him, whatever. But it's 10 on 11. You're handicapping your offense with Laquan Treadwell being your third receiver. I don't understand it. The depth chart should go Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, in whichever order you want to go. Who gives a damn? Jarius Wright, Michael Floyd, and then Laquan Treadwell. I'm sorry, it hasn't worked out. But for some reason, you keep playing them. It is inexcusable, and it just really boggles my mind. This is the one thing about Rick Spielman, and again, maybe this is the coach. Maybe this is Pat Shurmur. I don't believe it's Pat Shurmur. I don't believe it's Mike Zimmer, because the pattern of the past, all roads of the past patterns leads up to Rick Spielman. So whatever the case, there's no reason he should be ahead of Jarius Wright. Jarius Wright gives you the much better chance of being able to make plays, and that's what it's all about. You're a receiver. You're supposed to run routes and catch the damn ball. But anyway, moving forward, as far as the Cincinnati game, look, there's not really much to talk about. There's Xavier Rhodes versus A.J. Green. By the way, Xavier Rhodes, he got banged up again in that Carolina game. He was on the ground. So that's now 4 out of their last 5 games where Xavier Rhodes has been on the ground. But in this game, you definitely need him because A.J. Green is there. You don't want Trey Waynes to be guarding A.J. Green. A.J. Green will take advantage of those pass interference calls that he throws Andy Dalton will throw bombs up to once in a while. So you need Xavier Rhodes. But at some point, you got to let the dude rest. But The only concern that I do have, and Andrew Kramer tweeted out as of the recording of this day of this podcast on Wednesday, he tweeted out that Riley Reif was walking around without a walking boot. So that's good news. And come to find out that Mike Zimmer sounds optimistic about Pat Elflein playing on Sunday's game against the Bengals, and maybe even Mike Remmers. So that would be great. However, if there's personnel issues on the offensive line this coming week, I do have a concern. Now, again, I'm very confident in the Vikings winning out the regular season, but if this offensive line is going to be reminiscent of the last game against Carolina or 2016's offensive line, the concern that I have is one player, maybe even two players, not really just one player on the Cincinnati Bengals defense, and that's the one dude. If you could ban one dude in the league, it should be this dude. It's Vontaze Burfict. Vontaze Burfict is one of the dirtiest players in the NFL. I think he should be banned from the league. If there's any way to ban dirty players, he should be the first one on the list. But you know what? Outside of that, if Pat Elflein is there, I really hope Pat Elflein is there, because if he can somehow get contact with Vontaze Burfict, because the dude's a rhino, man. Pat Elflein has had a great year. He's a stud. He's dirty. He's gritty. He's everything you want in an offensive lineman. I think if he plays, this will be a good chance for Pat Elflein to get even better this season, because going up against a guy like that, he went up against Aaron Donald a couple of weeks ago, and there was one play, and we didn't hear much of Aaron Donald. I believe there was like a face mask call or something, or a defensive holding call on Aaron Donald, and that was the only time we heard his name. So he did a very good job on Aaron Donald with the combination with the guard mixes. But if there's any way he can get out there and make some sort of contact with Vontaze Burfict, I think that would be good as far as his growth, his mental toughness. I think that would be good for him for the long haul. So that's the one concern that I have. But like I said, I'm confident that the Vikings will win the rest of this regular season on out. Aaron Rodgers or no Aaron Rodgers, we'll talk about that in the next segment. As far as him coming back, I still believe the Vikings will win out the rest of this regular season. So anyway, coming up next, I just talked about it. Aaron Rodgers, he said he's medically cleared to come back. Had a shower net on his Instagram photo in the hospital bed, giving a thumbs up. But anyway, he says he's cleared to play, so we'll just have to see. Also, elsewhere in sport, also Carson Wentz, he's out for the year. What does this mean for the NFC playoff picture? Can the Vikings have a shot to reclaim the number 1 seed? And also in the NBA, DeMarcus Cousins, he's on the trading block, or is not trading block, but trading rumors. Mediocre and Best Sports Podcast with Realistic Rain.
There's just something in the world you cannot run from. Yeah, cause hurt people, not hard to love people. So evil, don't need you, I'm gone and won't see you. You wrong and I seen it. Nightmares, no dreaming, blocked and deleted.